Hey, it's Mark Marshall with Anatomy of Tone. I thought I would share 6 pieces of bad advice that I've received over the years. That now I fully understand they were bad advice, but maybe during the time I kind of fell for it. The first one, number one, is if you build it, they will come. This statement's been used a lot over the years and, of course, became popularized by the film Field of Dreams many years ago. But you still hear this sometimes, and the notion is that if you get really good at what you do, you write amazing music, that people will find you and you'll become successful. But that's just not how it happens, right? You'll often find that, not often, but enough to surprise you, that the people that become successful aren't even always the most talented people. Not all of them, just saying some, and that comes through hard work and also uh, networking and being discoverable. So you have to get outside of your rehearsal room and you have to meet people. People have to know what you do. They have to see you do your thing in order to understand your capabilities and then consider you. So you definitely have to get good at networking and be out there to be noticed. Number two, you have to be unique at all costs, right? Whatever you do, don't be like anybody else. You have to be completely a unique individual. Well, I was sold on this and preached this for a long time by somebody who was actually a toxic influence. And the truth of the matter is nobody is completely unique. Right? It's impossible unless you've only lived on an island or in isolation for however many years until you get to the point that you all of a sudden somebody discovers your music. The minute that you start exposing yourself to people as you're working on music, before everybody hears your finished product, you're going to immediately be influenced. And of course, you're influenced by the sounds around you, even in nature and in the industry. So you are influenced, and we are a sum of our parts. Now, where the line crosses, I think, is when you're obsessing about one particular sound or person and you're trying to be that person. I think that's not where it's at, right? I think you want to put your own combination of spices and styles of music and influences together to make your own type of music. And I think that's a good distinction. So don't put so much pressure on yourself that you have to be completely unlike anybody else. We're all using a lot of the same ideas in harmony and orchestration and song arrangement. You know, they exist, and you can't every single time come up with a completely new form that nobody's used in a song, for instance, or even a chord progression. But what you can do is you find a different way to state it that it isn't exactly how it's been stated before. But don't put that pressure on yourself that everything you do, you have to question yourself to make sure that every single element of every part is unique, because that is a kind of a destructive process, which I learned. Number three, this technique or that technique is bad for you. Never do it. Well, there's a few instances where this is true, and it mostly revolves around making sure that you don't injure yourself physically when you're playing. I think that aside from making sure that you're not causing any harm to yourself, what is good technique, what is bad technique is very debatable, because technique varies a lot depending on the genre and style that you play and work in, right? So metal technique is going to be a little bit different than, say, flamenco technique or such. So you have to make sure that when you're getting information or people are giving you that advice of like what's good and what's bad, that they're actually experts in the genre or style that you're asking about, right? Because they just don't carry over to every genre. There's a couple of things that do, like I said, to make sure that you don't create any physical injuries for yourself. But outside of that, it is really not that black and white to say like just X technique is bad. Okay. Number four, music theory will ruin your creativity. I've heard this a lot, and I'm a person that's very into music theory. I'm also a prolific composer, and I just constantly write music, and music theory has not for a second impaired my ability to do that. In fact, it's speeded up. I think people are insecure about not knowing music theory, and so this statement gets thrown around as a bit of a self-defense and a way to throw shade onto people that are actually into music theory. The thing I will say is that I find that people that are most trying to represent their feelings and emotions in art, they don't start with music theory. I don't start with music theory most of the time. You know, a lot of times I'm just trying to compose and create a sound that is reflective of what I'm feeling. And then I use music theory to expand that, to finish the song, to arrange the song, right? To solve any problems I'm having in it. As music theory is amazing for that and does not for 1 second ruin your creativity. Your creativity can stay put as long as you want, as long as you keep feeding it. In fact, music theory can help you keep feeding your creativity so that you don't get stuck. So I found that to be a lie. Number 5, don't rock the boat. Okay, well, if you have a gig or you're on a session, like you don't want to say anything because you're afraid of getting another gig, or getting blacklisted. And there are some things, of course, you have to be conscious about. In some situations, it's better just to walk away from and not say anything. But if you're being treated unfairly, you should most definitely not be worried about rocking the boat, because if it's that bad of a situation, you're actually better off walking away from it. And if they're treating you that poorly, if they say something about you and try to spread bad rumors, people are eventually going to figure out who that's coming from and what the truth is. So the key is just to maintain being yourself and have a lot of self-worth and know when you're being taken advantage of, and don't worry that you won't get the next gig. In fact, I found that sometimes walking away from a bad situation opens up the door for new opportunities. You do have to weigh the situation a little bit, because there are some times where there are things you just have to suck up. But if you're in sort of an abusive situation, then you definitely don't, and don't be afraid of rocking the boat and saying something or walking away. Number 6, teachers will make you sound like them. Well, this just isn't true, right? Maybe there's been a couple of teachers out there that have maybe tried to push their students to be exactly like them, but I really haven't encountered them, and I'm sure they exist, but in small numbers. Then most of the time, most teachers, if you spend the time to find a great teacher and somebody who's really good at what they do, then they're not going to try to get you to sound like them. I don't want my students to sound like me. I don't encourage them to do that. I want them to be like them, and to figure out their own style and their own combination of elements of influences, right? And I find that this is the case with most teachers. This is another one that fits in that category of fear tactics that that people use, I think, to feel better about themselves when they're feeling insecure. They don't want to get better, or they're afraid to admit that they're not good enough, or they could learn, and they're afraid to take lessons, so they discredit lessons. But taking lessons is such a valuable tool, and I still do it even where I'm at in my career. I love studying with people and gathering new information, and music is just you know, it's an exploration that will never end, and you could always learn more. So don't be afraid of teachers pushing their influence on you into the way that it actually obscures who you are. A good teacher will not try to change who you are. They'll just try to highlight it, right? And I think that's the goal. So those are 6 tips that I feel like that I could share that hopefully can help you out. If you're digging this video, you could check out anatomyoftone.com. Also, if you hit subscribe and like, leave some comments, let me know if you have any advice that was horrible that you'd like to share with people, so maybe they don't go through the same trial and error that we did. So until next time.